Welcome to It's Later Than You Think, the podcast about living in the moment, enjoying the ride, and making the most out of our lives. I'm your host, Patrick Ailshire, a 40-something-year-old Wisconsinite, sharing my experiences and encouraging you to rethink time, purpose, and everything in between. Let's make the most of right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Later Than You Think. My name is Patrick. Thanks for joining me today. At the time of recording, it is very, very hot here in Milwaukee. It's a little steamy. We are currently sitting right around 97 degrees with the heat index over 100. That's a bit much. Now, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the facts according to the AccuWeather app or weather.com. You can check that as well. But it's warm. And I'm not complaining because in 7 months when it's January and it's 30 or 40 below with the wind chill, I will then be complaining. I do like warm weather. It's just that the stinking humidity is somewhat intolerable at times, especially when that dew point is getting up in the 70s. Oof, not great. With that all said, I want to share a clip with you from a classic 2001 movie called Pootie Tang. This movie is not good. I was just being silly. It grossed a whole $3.3 million at the box office in 2001, which still at that time, not great. It was written and directed by Louis C.K., but when I watched this in high school with my buddies, it was one of those movies you watch because it's so stupid. It does have a decent cast in it. So actors or actresses such as Jennifer Coolidge, Wanda Sykes, Chris Rock, Dave Attell, J.B. Smoove, to name a few, and the clip I'm going to play is a quote that I will use often whenever it gets this ungodly hot out. And in this scene, Chris Rock plays JB, is having a conversation with Mario Joyner, who plays Lacey.
Man, it is hot today. Whoa, it's hot out here, man. It is hot today.
You know it's hot out.
Yeah, I just said that. I said it's hot out here, man.
Yeah, you know it's hot too.
Yeah, that's why I said it, man. It is hot out here.
I know, I'm just saying it's hot too.
God, that is so ridiculous. And it's ridiculous too. On that note, we're going to get rolling into the interview this week. It was really cool to catch up with my guest, Jess, someone I went to high school with that I've kept in touch somewhat over the years through the social media world, as many people do. And a couple months back, we connected as we were both in marathon training mode, and it was nice to chat about the world of fitness and running and just things going on in our lives. It really is great to catch up with someone that you haven't really spoken to in person for many years, particularly when the conversation goes as smoothly as it did with Jess and I. So my guest this week is Jessica Burnett from the Houston, Texas area, if I got that right.
Yep, that's right.
Welcome, Jess. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Jess and I went to high school together.
Yeah.
Which was exciting times. Mom and Dad, if you're listening, Jess may or may not have been at the house for a little party once or twice.
I can't confirm or deny that.
They found out about those at my college graduation when I was 26. Our friend Joe Hazard told a story about partying in the basement, and they were somehow surprised.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I reached out to Jess a while back, just seeing her post a lot of things on her socials about running. And if you've been listening, you know that I ran the Vancouver Marathon about a month ago, and Jess is big into running, as we're gonna hear her recently doing a pretty well-known race we'll talk about. I'm really glad that you're able to join us today. So let's start off with the first question. Can you tell us a little bit about your fitness or running lifestyle? What excites you about running, and how do you stay motivated?
Yeah, well, it's funny, I think this is so funny how we reconnected as you were kind of going into your marathon and everything. There's nothing runners like talking about more than running.
That's so true.
So yeah, I just have I've enjoyed it. I mean, I've always been really active, but I kind of laugh about it because in high school, you'll probably remember, like, I participated in track, but I was not good, and I was not at all like committed to it. I did it for fun. I played field hockey for fun. And I would never have really said that I was an athletic person, but it was really in college that I found that I really enjoyed running, and it was a really great outlet for me. And then I've just kind of kept at it, and it's been a really consistent piece of my life. And then I think a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to try and run a marathon because I'd done a lot of half marathons, and I had some friends that were kind of nudging me into the marathon. I joined a running group in Houston, and so the peer pressure finally broke me down, and I ran my first marathon, and I really enjoyed it. And so I'm just kind of, in my first marathon, I qualified to run the Boston Marathon. So
wow,
it's like, well, I have to run it, I mean, like, people train their whole lives, and it's this epic race. And so that's kind of how I went from not running a marathon to now, having run a couple of them. So it's been really an exciting journey. It's been fun to see the fitness change. I think that's the part I really like about it is it's been like setting these different goals has kept it interesting throughout this time frame. So, there's always another goal to set and to try and reach. And there's different strengths that you can work on. And I've recently branched into high rocks, so that's been really fun. So it's just been, it's been a consistent outlet for me, but also something that I find that I can continue to challenge myself with. So that's what's motivated me, really.
What year did you run your first marathon?
So I ran in 2023.
Wow. Okay.
Houston Chevron Marathon. And then I ran it again in 2024.
Okay.
So that was the first marathon I ran. So
this is cool because you're pretty new, I guess, to the sport, where like, and you're fast. To qualify for Boston, that's really impressive. I like hearing that too, because that's just, for others listening, that like, it doesn't matter, where you start. Like,
right.
If it's something you want to get interested in, you can start small. And, you've been an athlete, since high school, college, but still you hadn't been doing long distance running other than maybe the halves.
Yep.
And so you have to run twice as far in the marathon. And so,
right.
That's pretty cool and pretty impressive to hear that. Like and from just what I've been following you on your socials, and I think I assumed that you had been running for longer than just the last couple of years, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, Jess is something I think someone who I would say like loves running or thoroughly enjoys it, where like, if you ask me, like, I think I like it. I don't know if and again, to my examples would be, I've run 3 marathons, but it was Milwaukee Lakefront in 2011, Milwaukee Lakefront in 2019. So you had an 8-year gap, and then Vancouver was 6 years later, just about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I found, in those years in between where I'm like, oh, I kind of want to get back into doing more weightlifting, or I really got to try like yoga. And then I tell myself like, well, I liked running, but I don't know if I want to do another marathon. And then sure enough, here we are.
I'm one, as soon as I crossed the finish line this year at Boston, I was like, I don't think I need to run that one again. Like, I think I'm done. I've done Boston twice. Okay. But then, even now, as I look at it, I was just thinking about the other day, I'm like, yeah, I probably have to do it again. There's something that kind of draws me back to it. And I do think, I agree with you. I think that what I love about it, and this kind of made me think about your podcast too, is it isn't ever too late to start something. If you're interested in something and there's something about it that kind of, draws you in or kind of lights you up, like there's never a time that you're too late to really kind of do that. As long as you're passionate about it and you want to put the work in. And I've really come to enjoy the journey as much as the race and the kind of the celebration at the end. So yeah, you're right. It has been kind of a relatively recent thing that I've done these marathons, and I'm finding that the longer distance is something that I can be pretty competitive at, which is fun. Mm-hmm. So,
and Boston's historically pretty challenging course. Is that correct?
It is very challenging, and it really humbled me the first year I ran. So I qualified with my time in 2023, and then I ran Chevron again in January 2024, followed by Boston in April of 2024.
Okay.
And in some ways, I felt like going, from Chevron marathon to Boston, you've built up this mileage, you've got this fitness and fantastic to just kind of, just pull that fitness from January through to April. That was a tough turnaround. And the other thing was Houston is a very flat course. And so you're really like and in Houston, just training in Houston, it's a lot of flat. So you're just using the same muscles over and over again, as opposed to Boston, which is a lot of rolling hills. It is a net downhill course, but there's a lot of rolling hills throughout it. And then kind of the infamous Newton Hills leading into Heartbreak Hill, kind of going from miles 17 through to 21.
Okay.
That's the part that when you train in a flat environment, it rocked my world the first time. So I trained much better the second time around, which was great. Made it a much more enjoyable experience, but
good.
Yeah, it was humbling.
So Vancouver was also net downhill. Mm-hmm. However, there was some pretty decent steady inclines, specifically the first half.
Yeah.
I'm just ballparking here, but you had a couple hills that were like maybe a quarter mile, probably not quite a half, but it was like a steady incline where you're like you're looking up and then I look back and I'm like, oh, there's people downhill. Like this is, right. And then you had some nice little downhills too, but those are, people that aren't really familiar with running. Like you think, oh, downhill is great. Good. I'm going to like pick up the speed and you gotta, you don't want to do that. You gotta be careful. You're going to be, hurting your shins and your calves and all that. Mile 20 is when you got into Stanley Park, which is all along the seawall there in Vancouver. And I read about it and they're like, it's fairly isolating because there's like no crowd there and it's a good 5 miles. And
wow,
the view is great, but at the same time, it was like, okay, enough of this. Let's get to the finish line here. So,
right. You're already in the pain cave at that point. You're just ready for it to be over.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a tough time to be alone with your thoughts, I feel like.
It was. Yeah. I felt pretty good till about mile 23. And then that was where I was like, oh, I wish I probably should have had one more like goo or gel. Like that probably would have like hopefully kept me going. But I felt really good up until that point, and still the time I wanted to finish in, it was like 13 minutes faster. So that worked out.
You crushed your goal. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really, and I only set that goal as 4 hours because, again, back in 2011, when I ran Milwaukee, I finished in like 3:56. And then I ran again in 2019 and I did not train how I needed to at all. And I finished in 4 hours and 15 minutes, the same course. So then I was like, okay, flash forward 6 years later, I'm really going to try to do the training like I know how to, but I also know Vancouver is going to be tougher, but yeah, just running out there. I felt really good, energized. And I think, not only the training, having the strength in my legs and all that, but I think really like I made sure I stopped at every 2 miles for water, for Gatorade. Right. I had energy gels, and I think that was really fueling myself. Actually, is what helped out quite a bit this time.
It's amazing how different you can feel executing a race plan correctly.
Yeah,
versus not like it seems so simple, but just pacing yourself properly, having a plan and sticking to it, and then fueling properly throughout. It is like a night and day difference, both in like the final result of your time, but also your ability to actually enjoy the race. I screwed up so many things in Boston 2024, from really like getting dehydrated. It was pretty hot. It was like 75 and sunny. And the other thing about the race is you don't start until later in the morning.
Oh man.
So I'd had breakfast, but then, I had breakfast at like 6, and then we didn't run until 10:30. So I remember getting the start line and feeling hungry and thinking, that's not good.
That's not good. No.
That's not good at all. So I did much better with that, and then kind of fueling throughout the course. But that's what you want, is to be able to enjoy the experience and feel strong throughout. And you're going to get to that point in the race where it's not going to feel great, but you'd like that to be later on, and hopefully, that generally you're enjoying the experience. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have run Boston a couple times just recently this year as well. Do you have anything up next as far as running bucket list, or what's your plan for another race? Anything?
So I do. I actually just was talking with my coach this week about kind of what the plans are now that Boston's in the rear view, and kind of the High Rock season for 24, 25 is in the rear view. So I am running the Chicago Marathon this fall in October.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that, because more of a flat course. And so I'm going to try and set a little bit more of an aggressive time goal. Boston, I was going for redemption. So I did cut 12 minutes off of my time from 2024 to 2025. And I hit my goal time of 3 hours and 15 minutes. So that was what I wanted. I wanted to come back and do Boston the way I felt like I could do Boston.
Yeah.
But my PR in the marathon is 3 hours and 8 minutes.
Wow.
So I'm hoping in Chicago that I can get a new PR. I think that I'm planning to add more mileage to my training plan between now and then, and just see if kind of building that aerobic base and continuing to build strength is going to pay off for me. So that's the main goal for this fall.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
My brother and I chat quite a bit over text about just, he got me onto Strava a couple years ago, and we're watching each other's progress on there, and my dad's on there, and my sisters, and all that. But my brother and I talk quite a bit about just different things he's watching on YouTube, or I'm looking up, as far as just kind of just random races where, like, you got the Ironman, or you've got the 24-hour race, or there's just like, it's kind of fun to look at, like, could I do that? Or would I do that? So it's just,
question.
There was one, they do it in, I think it's in, Dousman or something, somewhere around there in the Oconomowoc area. It's called Arctos, I believe. And it's a run they do in, I think it's January or February. And you can pick, you would run either like 6, 8, or 10 hours straight. I'm not getting the right details right, but it's basically to see how many miles you can do in that time. And you can run with like another person, and then they stop, and you do like it's like a 2-mile loop or whatever, and then you can stop, and people get something to eat, and they've got like coffee and hot chocolate, and it's kind of more of like a fun run, but also it's the idea is to like run in these like really crappy conditions in the middle of winter in Wisconsin.
Yes.
So that's like one of those like, oh, that might be kind of fun, but like also cold.
We have an equivalent to that. So we have in Texas, we have the Habanero Run, which I've done for a couple of years in a row. I'm not planning to do it this year, but it's in August.
Ooh.
and it's out at this ranch kind of west of Houston, and it starts at high noon. So it starts at noon, and some people run it as an ultra. Like you can do an individual 100K or 100-mile race, and it's on trails as well. So it's all like this sandy trails. So I've done it with a team where we run a 100K relay. So you're breaking that up with your team members and stuff. And, basically my responsibility was to run 2 separate 10Ks throughout the day. And then you see which team can finish fastest. Yeah. It is uniquely terrible. Like the last year I ran it, I think it was like temperatures over 100. You're just like half of your job is to just see if you can keep your body temperature reasonably cool. So you don't get heat stroke. Like it's just uniquely awful.
Man, that sounds really
that's a bucket.
intense.
You could put that on your bucket list.
Sure. Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, add that.
Well, I've always wanted to do something that they stopped doing for a few years during COVID, and I think they brought it back. But I don't know if they had any of them in the United States this year, but I think it was called the Red Bull 300.
Okay.
Red Bull something. They sponsored it, but basically it's a run up a ski hill or a ski jump.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
good. And I'm like, and it's like it basically, like, I watched some YouTube videos on that. It's like, it takes, like, let's say someone who's in fairly good condition, not like maybe top notch, like maybe 15 to 20 minutes to get up.
Okay.
10 to 15 maybe. But like and they've got like cargo nets on the hill because it's like you're going up, it's so steep. And so,
oh my gosh,
it just seems like a killer, lower body workout. And I don't know, I just thought that just seems like something I need to try at some point. But
I think that would be fun. I also think a relay, like a team-based distance relay. There's one in Houston that I didn't do this year because I was doing the High Rocks in Houston, but they have a Texas Independence relay where you run like 200 miles again as a team. Yeah. And you're, handing off as you're going, but you run kind of through the night between Gonzales, Texas and Houston, Texas. Okay. So
they do Ragnar, I think it is.
Yeah, the Ragnar would be fun too.
Yeah, that's from Minnesota and down into Wisconsin, I believe it is. But
I can't remember. I mean, there's a couple different Ragnars.
Okay, it's a couple. Okay,
you can point to point from a couple different places.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. Real quick before we change topics, just a shout out. Kind of, you mentioned picking up racing within the last couple of years, and now it's really not too late. We say it's later than you think, so like, let's get going here. But my brother just ran his first marathon. He's in his mid-30s, and that was Chicago last year.
Okay.
But another thing is he ran it with my dad, who ran his first marathon at the age of 71.
That's incredible.
It's never too late.
Yes, it is. It's later than you think, but it's never.
I gotta reframe this podcast.
Exactly. Well, I think that's so cool. I mean, I think that's one of the neat things about the marathon. So you can say a lot. There were a lot of reasons I had on my list to not run a marathon. And even now, like the time commitment that it takes is a lot. And, when you're trying to balance family and life and work and whatever, like it's definitely more challenging to do that and make that commitment than to do a half. But one of the things I love about it is that even as you're kind of getting older, you can still make some really fantastic improvements in your time in the marathon. Like kind of your ability to endure doesn't leave you, and you've still got so many more years of really being able to participate. And even if you want to be competitive in the marathon, that's kind of a cool thing about that distance.
It is. And like, there's, my dad followed and my brother too. And I initially did, if you're still kind of just starting out and you want to plan, I mean, there is so much information out there, as far as just going to the pros, whether it's, Hal Higdon or, there's like a marathon rookie website or you get, if you want to take it up a notch, at some point, get a running coach. Right. And there's those resources out there to help kind of to guide you. The motivation's got to come within, but also, even the couch to 5K. I mean, start small, right? Just to, get out there. And I really like it because it's a great way to kind of zone out and just be in your thoughts for X amount of time.
It's been a great way to find community too. I know like a lot of what you're about and what you're doing with your podcast and with a lot of the other things you participate in, it's about community and building the community around you and being a part of the Milwaukee community. And I think the running community is so just inclusive, and there's just a lot of people that have, a lot of similarities in terms of health and fitness interests and overall wellness and being outdoors and experiencing the, kind of that whole fitness community. So I think it is really a neat way to get involved. It's been a nice way for me in, moving to Houston to meet people and to really feel like I've got a great friend group that we're all doing the same crazy things.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my next question, actually. So I am always intrigued. I know we had lost some touch over the years, but we did hang out in high school fairly often.
Yeah.
Just asking, people that I knew I went to high school with or friends of mine that have moved out of, Wisconsin. I'm always intrigued by, what brought you to where you're at in the Houston area, and is it what you expected?
Yeah, so it was my husband's job is what moved us to Houston. And when we went, I went kicking and screaming. I did not want to leave. I also had a brand new baby at the time too. So in my mind, it was, I have a sister and a brother here in the Milwaukee area, and then my parents were still here, and I have another sister in Minnesota. So we're all Midwest here. I was planning on raising my family here in the Midwest and really specifically in the Milwaukee area. So I was not happy about it. It also didn't help that then we moved and we had a huge multiple flood events. We had a hurricane all within kind of the first year that we were there. It was awful, but I've settled in. It has been now 9.5 years that we've been in Houston. Okay. And the kids have a lot of friends. We have a great community. I have a great running community. So one of the things I'll say about it, so on the plus side, the people in Houston specifically, and I do think there's so many, as you know, from your time in Austin, like each major city in Texas has its own kind of personality. So they're not all the same. But I think with Houston, there's so many people that have moved to Houston that are transplants to the city that I found it to be really a very welcoming place to be. There's a lot of people that are open to meeting new friends. There's other people that don't have family in Houston. So, we had people to have Friendsgivings with and it was very, very welcoming and very easy to kind of fold into the community in that way.
That's great.
It's tremendously hot. But there's some great months too, like, March when it's still, we're still getting snow up in Wisconsin. It's, oftentimes kind of 60s and 70s and sunny in Houston. So we have a little benefit there.
When I moved down to Texas, I remember asking someone, okay, so I know it's going to be I know it's hotter down here and I know things take a little bit longer, but when can I expect the leaves to change? And they look at me, they're like, yeah, dude, it's not happening. They're going to be green and then all of a sudden they'll be brown. And there's going to be, no, it's not happening.
Yeah. There's also a good number of things, especially in Austin, I'll say, actually, you probably had it worse than I did, but there's a number of things that will kill you. I was running on the trail. So during kind of the off season, I like to run on the trails in Houston, and we have some trails that kind of run along the bayou area.
Yeah.
And they're nice, shaded, which helps. But there's also snakes and copperhead snakes and coral snakes and snakes that will kill you. There's water moccasins when it rains. Coming from the Midwest, I was trying to explain to people there, I said, we have grass snakes. We have nice snakes, I guess, if you were going to. There's no real threat there.
Just the annoyance of mosquitoes.
Yeah. I've seen a scorpion at this point. I didn't ever want to see one. And that was outside. That was in Bandera, Texas. And I hope to never see one again.
Yeah, we had
fire ants.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
That was awful. the number of times I've found a fire ant mound, you know?
I lived in Austin for 16 months and was with my ex-girlfriend, and we had in our apartment, we had a scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
We had the fire ants at times, but the biggest shocker was the rat snake. We were living on a second floor apartment, second story, and we had gotten a dog recently. It was a Chiweenie, Chihuahua Dachshund, and we had the balcony out there, and like we were a little concerned that the dog was going to go through the slots of like the balcony there. So I had just went to like Walmart and got the like crappiest netting, and then just tied it around or whatever, and it was good, kind of a makeshift thing. And like a week later, I like was going to let the dog out, and like I happened to like look outside in the balcony, and there was a snake like coiled up in this like netting, and I'm like, how? And I'm like, what the hell? So like I called like animal control, because my apartment complex was like, we'll call animal control for you. And I'm like, I'll do it. And they said, well, these climb up trees. Okay. Or slither up trees.
Like, that's terrifying.
And it was probably going for your dog. Like, oh, great. Good to know.
Thank you.
But one more story about that I just thought of as I was telling the story. The best part of the whole where we were living was we were on the northwest side of Austin in like hill country, off one of their main highways, 620 it was called. And we were walking into like there was a path to go to like the Walmart, which was like essentially like a block away or whatever. And so like if you had to run and get something quick, that was nice to do that. But most people were like, I wouldn't go through there. And I'm like, why? And they're like, there was a pit, some snakes, like a snake pit that was found. And I'm like, really? So like, I like didn't know if I believed them. So I Googled it. And sure enough, like the year prior, there was this newscast, and there was like a huge snake pit found with like 50 some snakes, like right off the path.
Like Indiana Jones, like an Indiana Jones snake pit outside of your house. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is great. So we decided to take the long way to the store after that. But,
they don't tell you that when you're going to move to Texas. It's not like public knowledge that you're going to have hurricanes and snakes and those are the very obvious downsides. But I do think I had said when I used to go to Texas for work, I used to have to go to Houston pretty regularly, that I feel like people in Houston are as close to Midwesterners as I had found anywhere else, having traveled to California and to the East Coast. In terms of kind of the welcoming, like people will wave to you, say good morning. Like that doesn't happen everywhere. So I do feel like there's there's a little bit of that. People are generally pretty friendly. So
I'd say out at least in the suburbs of the Milwaukee area, you'll get that. Downtown, it's kind of like, it kind of depends what the mood people are in. There's a lot of times where when I run them run the Oak Leaf Trail. There was the first month I was training, I was like all pumped up. I'm like, I got to wave to people and do the nod or whatever. And like one day I was like hit like 85%, and my brother was in Chicago at the time, and he was like, oh, I get like 20%, But then there's times though, it's just like the runners will kind of nod to you sometimes, and some people are just like, nope, I'm just doing my thing. And at least make an effort to say hi.
I feel like you got to give a runner's wave.
Yeah, exactly.
That's customary.
So regarding the podcast, It's Later Than You Think, how would you say that phrase applies to your life? And again, kind of some of the taglines I've talked about over the last 5-6 months we've been doing this is, enjoying the ride, living in the moment, taking advantage of the time we have here. Yeah. Is there anything that you would say that does kind of resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, I tend not to be a person who's always great about living in the moment. I'm a planner. I always feel like I've got to be, I'm kind of a striver as well, obviously. But I feel like one of the things that I think about when I've thought about that phrase is just that if you feel compelled to do something, if you feel strongly about something, that you really do need to kind of make that, especially if it's kind of in alignment with who you are and your purpose and stuff, that you need to take those actions right away. Like, I mean, there's no, I guess what the example that kind of came to mind when I was thinking about that is, I was telling you 2 years ago, we bought this house here in Oconomowoc. And part of the reason that I felt so strongly about that was not just because I wanted to escape the Houston summer, which I definitely do, but also because I was feeling like we were at this stage where, now my kids are 7 and 9 and my siblings were having kids, and I wanted to have my kids know their cousins and their aunts and uncles, and to have them have that time, especially, my parents are now getting into their 70s, and I wanted them to have those relationships. And I think we had done a really good job while the kids were little, like bringing them to Wisconsin. We always come up for Christmas. We'd always come up in the summer. It's not like we're missing family events and things like that, but there's so much that kind of happens in the mundane, I would say, like in the stuff that you're not planning for, like we just want to get together and have dinner, or, I was just feeling like that was very important. And so we just said, let's figure it out. Like we can't move back full time, but what can we do? So, I think that became something that it was important. It was something that was really, for me, like aligned with something I really wanted in my life. And so we figured out a way to make that work. And it's been great for our family. And I think I'm so glad that we did it when we did it and didn't wait for the perfect moment, where we could like move back full time, like to not do anything just because we were waiting for everything to be perfect.
Yeah. This is your, second or third summer up here?
Second okay. Full summer that we're here. So
back in Wisco.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I think that you're absolutely right though. Waiting for the perfect time is never going to come, because there's always going to be something.
Right. Yeah. There's always a lot of reasons to not do something.
Yep.
But if you feel really strongly about it, or if it's really just kind of calling to you, if it's an interest, and I think this has been kind of part of the athletic pursuit too. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel the first year that I ran Boston that was super important to me, but I also thought I'm going to regret it if I don't do it. So do it now. Like, why wait? You don't know in that case, you don't know if you're going to qualify next year. You don't know if you'll have another opportunity to do it. So I had some friends that were really pushing me to try this High Rocks event, which is, kind of a mix of running and strength. And at the time I was like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in running. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to mess around with this other thing. And also I didn't consider myself to be particularly strong. And then I got interested in it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. Like, what's there to lose? So again, just kind of a case where I could have waited until I felt comfortable that I was strong enough and ready to do a great job at the event. But I just said, my sister was game. And so she and I signed up for a doubles competition, and we just said, you know what, we're going to go out and have fun. And that has really that piqued my interest and got me motivated to gain some strength and then to keep pursuing it after that. So I think just taking the first step.
Yeah.
Is something that you want to do.
So is that similar to CrossFit at all, or is it more like a HIIT?
It is. There's a lot of CrossFit athletes that have gotten into High Rocks. So for me, I found it to be a really great outlet for some of the endurance that I've built up running, because you do have to do, it kind of reads somewhere between a 10K and a half marathon in terms of the effort level, depending on kind of how hard you're pushing. But it really ends up being, somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half event where you're running 8 1,000 meter repeats. And in between you're doing a strength exercise of some sort, a sled push, sled pull, burpees. So so there's a lot of CrossFitters that are getting into it and getting their running endurance up. And then equally, I think I'm now seeing a good amount of runners that have come into it as well. But it's a great, I mean, it's a great event. It's kind of for everyone, really. Like there's whatever level you're at. So that's a great example of just kind of, if you're interested, taking the first step, because you may as well.
And that, I mean, all that's really important too, just to help. That's going to improve your running.
Right.
And vice versa to people that are, maybe doing CrossFit to work on their endurance as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
I hadn't heard of that. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. You'd probably like it. I mean, it would be a great, because I know you were mentioning building strength. And it is a great way to do that and to just diversify your fitness journey. Like for me, I found it really a nice way to break up. I was still running a lot, kind of as I was training for that event, I was still doing about 45 miles a week.
Wow.
So I was trying to prepare, get a base to build then from Boston. But then I was mixing in these strength workouts, 2 or 3 times a week, some compromised running, and that just kind of really just kept my attention and kept it interesting. And that's, having this be fun is what it's all about. So
you got it. So Jess, the last question is more of a random one, but you've lived in the Houston area, you grew up in the Milwaukee area. Do you have any memorable vacations that you've taken either as an adult or a child, or any particular vacation place that you have revisited a few times?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, now Wisconsin has become a vacation place. Right? Which is, it really is special. Like, it's been so cool to see my kids enjoy Wisconsin as a vacation place and somewhere that they are making awesome memories with family and meeting new friends and spending time on the lake and just kind of having those just amazing kind of Milwaukee summer memories.
Yep.
So that's been very cool. I think for me individually, one of my favorite vacations that I always think about is the time I went to the Grand Canyon and we did like a river rafting excursion. So we were 5 days and 4 nights in the Grand Canyon with a guided tour. It was by far one of the coolest things I've ever done. We hiked in on the Bright Angel Trail. And so that's like a nice 9-mile hike to start your journey. Okay. But sleeping out in cots in the Grand Canyon under the stars was just amazing. And there's no phones because you basically like put your phone in a ammo box and lock it away so it doesn't get wet, and you pick it up 5 days later. So it's
Isn't that great? It's I did one of my episodes a couple months ago was called "Put Your Phone Down," and I did a 36-hour purge. Just put it in a drawer on a Friday night and picked it up Sunday morning, and I didn't miss anything.
How did you feel? Tell me about the stages that you went through without your phone.
I was watching TV. I went to bed Friday night. I woke up Saturday, went and worked out, didn't have music on. So that was okay. I got over that pretty quickly. But then I was like watching TV and I was like, oh, where's this person from? And then I just had to sit there and not know. And then I went and did some errands, but I stuck around Milwaukee area. So I wasn't purposely trying to not do things, or I just wanted to do a typical weekend. But I had some errands to run, but I knew where I was going, so I didn't need my maps on because I just rely on that all the time. I went out to a couple establishments and hung out, and it was great because I just people watched.
Right.
There was a game on that night, and I was wanting to text my brother and my uncle, and I couldn't do that, but it was great. I loved it. I had Sunday morning, I took my phone out and I was like, oh, there's a handful of texts. Okay. But it was just,
the world didn't end.
Yeah. And I told people on the podcast, and I think I left my ringer on just because okay, if there was an emergency or something, but again, I don't live my life like that. The odds are that it's, you turn your phone off for a day, it'll be okay. And people always say, well, I got my kids and all that. I'm like, okay, you grew up without a phone. I grew up without a phone. Right. It was okay. Dinner's at 6:00. If you're not here, we're eating without you. And we were running around our hometowns just all summer long. And
we did get the Nokia phone.
Well, I got a phone in my freshman year of college. So
I got the Nokia phone. I think like my senior year of high school or something.
Okay, so but yeah, but
like the face that you could snap onto it. You could like change out the face of the phone.
yeah. But I mean, in like when we were younger, like grade school, you just I got my first one was the LG flip phone. It was like it was like the Zoolander size, where
yes,
like
that's fantastic.
Yeah, with the T9 texting, I believe. So
yeah, that's really good.
15. Oh, I got 15 texts. I got to delete these, otherwise I don't have any more room.
Right. Exactly. But you were getting charged per text message.
Yes.
At that time. Remember that?
Simpler times for sure.
Having to hang up while before leaving a voicemail, like you had to hang up very quickly before it would count as an actual call that went through.
That I remember people in middle school going to the movies and you would do the collect call.
Yes.
Movie's over, pick me up. Would you like to accept a call from? No. Or I had another friend of mine. We would like go out to like the park and just like hang out or whatever. No, my mom will pick us up later. Okay. And so her thing was, it was put like the 20 cents in the payphone. And then it was one or two rings and hang up. And I'm like, why aren't you calling your mom? She's like, yeah, but we got a thing. she doesn't actually answer. She knows if it rings twice and hangs up, it's time to come pick us up. So it's like, you guys are so frugal, but
I love it.
Yeah. Good.
Well, I like that idea. I think I have gone on for periods of time where I've tried to just remove myself from social media. To me, like that's the thing. It's not the phone on its own isn't a problem. It's the social media that's the problem.
Here's what you need to do, because I've done this before too. I'm not currently doing it, but here's what you delete the apps off your phone, the social media apps. Because then if you want to go on them, you're forced to use the desktop versions, and they have purposely made them just completely frustrating to use because they want people. They used to be easy, like 5-10 years ago, you could go on Facebook on your computer and it's no problem. And Instagram, I don't know ever about Instagram, but like those other apps, they're a pain in the ass to use on your computer because they want you to be on your phone. And that was like what's helped me. Like, oh, this is really annoying, but now I wanted to upload a picture on my Instagram. Well, I got to email it to myself, and then I got to. This is a whole lot of extra work here, but that has helped me as far as like. I know some people do like the timing, like after like an hour it'll lock me out of the app, but like all that takes is just to go back into settings and turn that off.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm guilty of. You just actually read my number right there, man. Yeah, I have a timer set, and then I just decline it.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. I'm sure you've seen the Netflix documentary years ago. It was probably around COVID time when it came out about just like all the social media, the Google, the YouTube, and like those CEOs that were like, yeah, we don't even let our kids use this stuff.
Right.
Because they know how addicting it is, and but mental health.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that is something that I would, if I was going to do something to better myself, that would be the first thing I would probably do is to get off social media.
Yeah.
So maybe I should make that a resolution for myself for the balance of the year or something.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. It's later than I think. I need to get off. Time is now.
The time is now. Well, Jess, I want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast and chatting. This has been super fun, and it's great catching up. And I was telling another guest I had on a few months ago, we had also gone to high school with them, but they were a couple years younger than we were. And I remember telling her, like, off the air, I was like, before we recorded, I was like, you weren't in our class, were you? Because I feel really bad because I don't really remember.
Yeah. Well, we had a class of over 500.
Yeah, so that was kind of.
I mean, in fairness, we weren't going to know everyone.
Sure. I mean, that's true. And as I remember telling her at graduation, I was, for alphabetized, right? So I was in the front row.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know who I was sitting by, but I remember looking over and talking to this person twice. And one was, there was someone speaking, and I said, "Who is that?" And then they're like, "Oh, that's so and so. They've been here for like 3 or 4 years." Oh, and then I remember looking over later, someone else was speaking, and I was like, "Aren't they a junior?" Nope, they're graduating with us too. Oh, okay. Well,
Good to know. But conversely, like there is a group of people here that have stayed really close since high school, which I think is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that you miss out on from, like I've missed out on from the move. Like I'm no longer connected with kind of the contingent from our school. I mean, I'm sure if I like reconnected with people, like, they're gonna ostracize me, but I'm not connected with the group as well, which I think is a very cool thing that you guys have stayed in contact and still kind of have that friendship.
Yeah. I'd agree. There's I'd say a handful that I talk to on a fairly, I don't want to say frequent's the right word, but a couple of people definitely like more frequently, but still it's one of those, like if you only see each other once or twice a year, it's like, still like you haven't missed a beat. So
yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, it's been great catching up, and congratulations on your marathon.
Yes. And likewise with you. So good luck with training for all the upcoming things as well. I'll be looking forward to seeing your updates and all that. So
Definitely. Well, thanks for having me on. I love what you're doing. And
thank you.
Thanks for the
Appreciate
conversation.
it. Yep. Thanks a lot, Jess.
All right.
Okay, now that you have listened to the conversation with Jess and I, how motivated are you to get out there and run that race? Maybe it's a 5K. Maybe it's a half. Maybe you're going to do the full. Maybe you're going to set some other fitness goal for yourself. It's fun. Maybe not running. Maybe you don't find running fun. But I think being active, whether that's riding a bike, going for a hike, going for walks, swimming, any of that, just being active. It can help you feel good. It can help you look good. Could really go on and on about the benefits of exercise. I want to thank Jess one more time for being a guest on the It's Later Than You Think podcast. If you did enjoy this episode, like, subscribe, share on your socials, any or all that is always appreciated. Get the word out about living in the moment, realizing that time is ticking away. And as Jess and I mentioned, it's not too late, but it is also later than you think. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon.